Gerald Celente is an American trend forecaster, publisher of Trends Journal, business consultant, and an author. He also describes himself as a political atheist. In other words, he is not a true believer in any of these parties. He is an independent thinker. He is a citizen of the world. You can find him at trendsresearch.com. That's where you can find Trends Journal. Joining us now is Gerald Celente. Gerald, what is going on here with the markets?
Well, it's what we had forecast. The panic is on. Our last broadcast of 2015 on December 30th, the Trends in the News broadcast was the panic of 2016.
Yes.
Of course, I've been on with you and Alex throughout the year, and in early August, we made the forecast that the markets would unravel this year, and they have. There was no Santa Claus rally. It's been one decline down. It was a flat year overall on the Dow, but the decline had already begun. And when you listen to the media, first they blame China, and then they blame oil. It's one of our top trends of 2016 that we came out with well over a month ago into the new year, looking ahead. And it's the Great Recession that's global. It's a global recession going on. That's why commodity prices are falling. It's not only China. It's a lack of demand around the world, and it's a very simple equation. Far too few have much too much, and far too many have much too little. We all know about the 0.01% that controls the world's wealth, and I'm not making that number up. You have 85 people that have more dough than half the world's population, of 3.25 billion people. 85. Take a trip here in the USSA. And I was listening to some of your commentaries on how they take more of our rights away, and we're basically just slaves for the multinationals. Well, I call it Slavelandia. So look what's happening in Slavelandia. You have a gap between the rich and the poor that's wider than it was during the Gilded Age. You have 400 people worth $2.5 trillion, while the middle class is now a minority, while our real median household income is below 1999 levels. So then the people are saying, yeah, but with those gas prices down, well, you know, people could go out and buy more. Not if everything else is going up. You mentioned about the Obamacare ripoff, where we the people are being forced to buy insurance from private companies. The merger of state and corporate powers, by the way, it's called fascism.
Yeah, they call it tag teaming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascism.
Yeah.
So now what's going on is that the people don't have the money, and it's worldwide. So that's why you're seeing it's not only oil. For example, let's go back to the Great Depression, and we're in one now. For all those, what is it, the labor force participation rate down to 1970s levels, when women weren't in the workforce like they are now, and it's still that bad? So when you look at the depression that's going on with so many people, you can have low prices. It's called a depression. Yeah, if a dozen eggs only cost a quarter during the Depression, you still couldn't afford them. So you could have low oil prices, but you have all your other expenses as real wages continue to decline when accounting for real inflation. What we're going through, this is the beginning, this is the panic of 2016. And I want to make this clear, David. In November of 2007, I took out the domain name, the Panic of 08. That's how sure I was. Oh. We were so sure about this panic that we named it at the end of the year. You're going into the new year, and the equity market panic has begun. Here we are.
Wow, that's amazing. And as you pointed out, when people look at things like the Chinese market and oil, those are symptoms of the greater problem, which is the depression that is underlying all of this. How deep do you think this is going to go? How far do you think this is going to go? I mean, is there any optimism on your part that we're going to come out of this? Because you talk about the concentration of wealth as they have become the only owners of not only wealth, but they want to be the people who own everything, even the only ones who own cars. Okay, we're going to have the banks literally own our homes, and we pay them rent. We pay rent in terms of property tax. We're going to have the same situation with cars, with private car ownership disappearing as well. They want to own everything, and once they do, are they going to have a society where they just have robots provide for their needs and use the robots as slaves instead of human slaves that they've got now?
Both. They'll use both. And the people, there's such a lack of courage in this country. And I'm not talking, of course, I mean, there's what you guys are doing, what we're doing, a number of others. Peter Schiff is going to be on later. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, David Stockman, Dr. Andrew Napoli, Judge Andrew Napolitano. There are a number of us out there, but we're in the vast minority. Most of the people clap and applaud to their, their presidents, their prime ministers, and chancellors.
Yeah.
So until the people rise to a greater level and stop, understanding, to begin to understand they weren't put on this earth to take orders from lowlifes, then that's the only way we're going to have the change. And I mentioned briefly yesterday with Alex, this is a time not only for a third party, but a fourth and a fifth. I mean, this is watching the presidential reality show last night is an insult to anyone's intelligence. Every time you ask them a question, they go into their campaign spiel without giving an answer.
Oh, yeah. That's a great tactic. That's a very deliberate debate tactic to not answer the question. And if you go on about some other topic, they'll come back and say, but you didn't answer my question. All right, I'll answer your question now so they get more time. That's a tactic that they use. What do you think about the fact, as you mentioned yesterday, we've had 20+ thousand bombs dropped by Obama all over the world. He can't shed a tear about that. But, of course, Republicans don't think that was enough. They want even more. Every time they go to another candidate, it's like, oh, I'm going to be tougher than these other guys. I'm going to be tougher than Obama. I'm going to go to war with the Russians. I'm going to do, whatever.
I get a kick out of it. I see little Marco Rubio and Teddy Cruz, for example, shooting there, and Ed Christie. What a joke. I mean, you put all these three guys in a paper bag, they wouldn't be able to fight their way out of it. And they talk so tough.
Yeah, especially Christie.
So these little boys of nothing. If you put them all together, maybe they have the size of, cojones, the size of a mothball, So what I'm saying is they can take the people to war very easily. You've heard me say this before. When all else fails, they take you to war.
Yes. And
that is going to be the end game unless we change it. There is no stopping this economic decline. It should have happened. It should have happened, but it was stopped after the panic of '08 because of all of the cheap money that they threw into the system with quantitative easing, a word and a system made up that never happened before, and zero interest rate policy. So now they've run out of tools.
That's right. And, of course, they did the quantitative easing. They printed all this money, and then a lot of that, great majority of that, they didn't even put into the market. They kept at the banks and paid the banks massive amounts of interest on the money that they didn't even put out into the economy. If they had put it out, we probably would have had hyperinflation.
And the other fact of it is that the wealth created since the panic of '08, 95% of it went to the 1%.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So again, this is fascism. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. You go back to our trends journals going back to 2008, when Henry Paulson, I think was he playing roles in Frankenstein movies now, I think, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs and Bush's Treasury Secretary, when he gave us too big to fail. And again, in capitalism, there's no such thing as too big to fail.
That's
so
right.
What happened was our headline was Wall Street hijacks Washington. It's a takeover.
Oh, yeah. They're not only too big to fail, they're too big to jail. I mean, this guy, El Chapo, that we've seen so much press about, his Sinaloa cartel had its own private window to launder money at HSBC. And, of course, the Obama administration's Justice Department, quote unquote, refused to prosecute them for money laundering, saying, well, it wouldn't serve to put any executives in jail or to pull their charter there. And as everybody pointed out, you're saying then that they're too big to jail. That's the kind of corruption that we see with this crony capitalism.
And those were essentially the words of the former Attorney General, Eric Holder, who's now back with that white shoe boy firm on Wall Street.
Yeah, go straight back there.
Yeah, that protects the criminals. And you mentioned about not doing anything with HSBC. How about the 6 banks that were convicted, not charged, convicted of felonies for rigging the LIBOR rate, for rigging the Forex markets, $5.3 trillion a day, the interest rates, currency markets, and not one head rolled. But for us, the little people, you know, the guy just read they're going to lower that alcohol level to 1 drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 1 drink and you get in that car, we're going to get you. Don't go over that yellow line. Why
here in Austin,
you had your brights on.
Here in Austin, they've got forced blood draws, and you know, if you resist or you say you don't want to, they've taken people down, strapped them to a gurney, pulled out their blood, found they had 0 alcohol level. But that's the kind of fascist tyranny that we're looking at. You're talking about, they're going to lower it to 1 drink, and that's something that's coming from the feds. They want to do that nationwide. I mean, this is worse than the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm somebody who doesn't drink. And it bothers me because I know that I'm still possibly going to get pulled over and have a blood drawn without my consent.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's all tied together. So going back to the economy, I mean, what's the Dow doing now as we speak? Do you know?
Right now, the Dow is down 2.72%, 445 points.
445 points. And what's the NASDAQ at?
NASDAQ is down 3.2%, 147 points.
And what's it at?
Sorry? S&P is down 2.5%.
No, what's it at? Is it 4,000 what?
44.68.
44.68. The NASDAQ was at 5,000 in 2000. And here we are 15 years later, 16 years later, and look where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you got people like Chris Christie saying to the baby boomers who are losing their 401ks to all of this manipulation, saying, well, you know what, we're going to take away the money that we promised we would pay you in this Ponzi scheme called Social Security.
Oh, yeah, as they get all their benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're looking at, when we're looking at this market decline, this is unprecedented. The decline in oil prices now that we're seeing, we're almost down almost like 20% in the new year. 20%. So what we're looking at is the worst oil collapse since OPEC really became OPEC, 1970s. Now we have to put it together into where we're going. When I said when all else fails, they take you to war. Look what's going on in the Middle East. These dictatorships that they like to call the kings and the emirs, these countries are in deep trouble. They shut the people up during the Arab Spring by dumping more dough into their coffers over there. And now they're pulling it back. Saudi Arabia, remember, now we're looking at oil at around $29 a barrel. Saudi Arabia needs $100 a barrel just to break even.
Yeah.
You're going to see destabilization as they keep spreading war in Yemen and as they have in Syria. Now you're looking at Turkey exploding as that economy is crashing along with the Turkish lira. Then come back to the states. Then go back to oil. Go to all the states and all the cities and all the counties that became enriched with the shale boom. Go back to transportation, what happened with the railroads and all of these cars that were being put online. I'm saying this because of all the debt that has been taken on to fuel the boom. When you put in the mining sector and the energy sector, you're looking at about 20% of the junk bonds in the United States in those sectors. And now those bonds for those companies that have gone bankrupt are selling for pennies on the dollar with more to come.
Wow. And, of course, when you look at Saudi Arabia, as you pointed out there in Yemen, kind of a Vietnam war where they're attacking that country. Of course, our press is very silent about that. They're also not talking about the fact that all these people that they executed right after the new year began, I think they waited so they wouldn't set a new Guinness record for beheadings. But all these people that they executed, especially this one particular guy, that has created a massive sectarian division in the country. So they've got a lot of political turmoil within their country. They're fighting a Vietnam type of war. And, of course, there are big buddies with the petrodollar that Nixon and Kissinger put in. That's really what's a key part of what's been propping up our fiat currency throughout the decades. Along with the Federal Reserve, they've got the Saudis coming in with the petrodollar. That's all about to collapse as well, isn't it?
It is. And when you made a good point, too, about the revolution going on in there and the social unrest in Saudi Arabia after they executed, of course, their Shia cleric. And where most of the Shias live? On the eastern end of Saudi Arabia. Where is most of the oil? Right over there.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the Yemenis that they're slaughtering, probably up to over 10,000 about now, destroyed the most, the poorest country in the Middle East, and they've done nothing to warrant the attack, which, by the way, was launched from Washington, D.C. by the Saudi ambassador on March 26, 2015, and the United States is part and parcel to it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm mentioning that also because you have about 4 million Yemenis living in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of them work in the oil fields. So what you can see a major catastrophe happening with Saudi oil that may temporarily boost up the price. The Middle East has exploded. It's not about to explode. It has exploded. It just hasn't made the news, just as the financial crisis that we're going through now in the equity markets has not.
Well, we got to go to break. Thank you so much, Gerald. And, of course, stay with us. We're going to be right back with Gerald Celente. TrendsResearch.com is where you can find Trends Journal. We're going to be right back with more insights from Gerald Celente. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gerald Celente. And, of course, we hear this battle of the British there. Of course, that was President Jackson who stood up to the Federal Reserve, didn't he, Gerald?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And he also said, one man of courage makes a majority.
There you go. Yeah. And, of course, it wasn't the Federal Reserve. I understand it was the National Bank at the time. And and they said, yeah, we're going to have the National Bank. He said, well, the Supreme Court made their ruling. Let's see them enforce it. So it was, and we've been talking about the economy. What do people do right now with the, what is your advice to them? Of course, you want to have preservation of capital. What can somebody do if they got a 401k and they see the stock market crashing because they have forced people to put their IRAs into Wall Street investments there? What can they do?
Well, of course, I can't give financial advice, so
Sure.
only speaking for myself. You're seeing a lot of people leaving it in cash. And I also, again, thinking for myself, GCs, 3Gs, guns, gold, and a getaway plan. So gold is really, to me, when you're looking at everything going down, gold is going up because it's the ultimate safe haven commodity as all the other ones are going down. I want to make this really clear. With the conditions going on now in the equity markets and the reality of a major crash happening, coupling on that, if there is, quote, a terrorist strike, false flag or real, you may not be able to get your money because they'll call, quote, a bank holiday. Isn't that lovely language? A holiday. You can't get your money, and they'll devalue it. And they're devaluing currencies around the world. You're looking at, you just saw what happened in Argentina. People say, should I own gold? Hey, how about if you live up there in Canada, not so far away? What's your loonie at? Oh, it's only down, to 70 cents against the dollar? Would you rather own gold? So what I'm saying, David, is prepare for the worst is my motto. If the worst doesn't happen, you lose nothing. Yeah. If the worst happens, you can lose everything if you didn't prepare for it. So I believe there are possibilities of bank closures if the panic goes in a direction where it's heading and continues. If on top of that there's, quote, a terrorist strike, false flag or real, because, and I say that without being a conspiracy theorist, because after all, remember the Maine? Hey, how about that Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened? Oh, I'll tell you what, David, that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, that's
So
right. That's a real fear. That's a real fear that they're going to ramp this up. And, of course, they have laid the groundwork for conflicts all over the country. And before we go to break, I want to tell you real quickly, in terms of talking about preparing, one of the things that you can do is to make sure that you've got food. And, of course, we have a special that's going to be ending today. 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select storable food. For the next 24 hours only, we're giving you 30 to 40% off the retail price of all InfoWars Select storable food at InfoWarsStore.com. It will last for 25 years. It has great and effective packaging that lets you open it and then reseal it for use within the same week. And you know that food prices are going up. They could cut down on who knows what's going to happen, as Gerald was just saying. You never know what's going to happen to your supply line. So certainly you need to have food as part of that. Again, you can get that 30 to 40% off all InfoWars Select storable foods at InfoWarsStore.com, and that's just for the next 24 hours. Now, we're going to come back in the next segment. Gerald's going to stay with us, and I want to get a little bit of his take on what he thinks is going to happen in the future with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and these other, quote-unquote, trade deals that are far more than trade deals that are coming up, and also his comments about what happened last night with the debates, where he thinks this is going to lead with politics. Is it going to help us at all, or is it a big sideshow? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gerald Celente in this segment, and we're going to be talking to Peter Schiff in the next segment. Of course, if you're following the economic news, you can see that there's been a huge decline in all the American indexes here, and of course that's going on across the world as we've been talking to Gerald Celente. We're going into a deeper depression, in his opinion. I agree, because the situations that we're seeing in this market, in the Chinese market, and the oil market are all symptoms of a deeper problem, and that is an economic slowdown that is global. That's something we should all be very concerned about. Gerald, as we were looking at the debate last night, and as you said to Alex Jones yesterday, it really is just a celebrity show. I call it Celebrity Big Brother. I couldn't really see that much difference between the guys who were on the stage last night. I mean, is there any hope in terms of getting any of these people elected that it's going to make any difference whatsoever? You talked about having a third-party option out there, but, of course, they're going to shut that down in terms of people who were, I've seen many times working with the Libertarian Party, they get on the ballot in 50 states, and they're not allowed on the debate stage, or we do it at the state level. You can get on the ballot at state level. They still won't let you on the debate stage. Do we have any hope of getting a third or fourth or fifth party?
Well, if Spain could do it, if Italy could do it, if they could do it in other countries, why can't we? And it has to be a unified effort. And never before in my career, and one of the ways I made my name in my book, Trend Tracking, back in the late 80s, far better than Megatrends, Time Magazine, I predicted there'd be a new third party in 1992, and I mentioned, for some strange reason, someone like Ross Perot. Mm-hmm. The conditions exist today better than they were back then. And what Donald Trump has done is to show what really a freak show it is. As I pointed out, you know, this was the cover of our magazine, the Trends Journal, back in the spring of 2015. Cowards, liars, freaks, and fools, welcome to the presidential reality show. And that was before Trump got into it. So what he's done is he exposed, really, as the term that he uses that I totally agree with, that the people running the government are incompetent and stupid. So if you have a new leader of the incompetents and stupids, it's not going to make a difference. It has to be a whole new way. And
is this something we do at the ground, from the ground up? I mean, I look at things like jury nullification. I look at state nullification. Everybody gets mesmerized like a cobra with a snake charmer about the presidential elections, and they completely ignore what's going on locally. And it's harder to track that because we all talk about what's going on at the national level. Nobody really talks about what's going on at local level. You have to really dig to get that information.
Well, there's a reason for that, because of the consolidation of the media. Yeah. You have these private equity groups that have bought up all the newspapers. Matter of fact, they have centralized locations right where you are over there, where they aggregate the news, and the same stuff goes to the newspapers that they own all over the world. They don't even have copy editors anymore in most of these smaller newspapers. So you're not getting local reporting anymore. Those days are gone. So it's up to the people. Again, if they could do it in Spain, if they could do it in Italy, we could do it here. The opportunity exists now more than ever. Yeah, I just want to backtrack on one thing and listening to what you were saying about storing up on food and going back to what's going on with the economy. And again, it's a crisis mode, but the people are detached from it because a lot of people aren't in the markets like they used to be. It's only now for the very rich.
Yeah.
And so to prepare and prevail and prosper, it's having your food supply.
Absolutely.
It's having a getaway plan. It's having your hand on your money.
And it's understanding where the trends are going. And if you want to keep up with that, you can go to trendsresearch.com. We've been talking to Gerald Celente, publisher of Trends Journal. Thank you so much, Gerald.